Hi, welcome back. In today's video I want to talk about what the current situation is with the flooding here in the south of Brazil in Rio Grande do Sul. So I did a video about a week ago explaining what caused the floods and all the areas impacted. So now I just want to show you what the current situation is, and it is getting slightly better. So the good news is that the floodwaters are receding, but there still are large areas underwater. So I showed you this map in the previous videos. This is Brazil, and Rio Grande do Sul is down here in the south. And the area that was severely impacted by the flooding was this mountainous area here, the dark green, called the Serra. And then also the area down here around Porto Alegre, which was the capital. And the latest is that the floodwaters are now moving down this lagoon or lake called Lagoa dos Patos and starting to flood a bit these towns and cities down here as well. But first of all, let's just look at the towns and city here in the mountainous area. First, so one of the rivers that burst its banks and caused a lot of flooding was Rio Taquari. So you can see the river here, and one of the towns that got very badly impacted was Musum. So you can see here, and nearly the whole town was completely flooded, lots of destructions. But now you can see the floodwaters have receded, and now the town's just covered in mud, with buildings, homes destroyed, cars destroyed, roads and bridges destroyed. So this town got very badly impacted. And then if we go a bit further south, another city that got impacted a lot was Lajeado. So this is much bigger. So this one's got like 90,000 people, and you can see here that a large part of the city got flooded, but then now the floodwaters have receded and again just covered in mud, and you can see all the destruction. Okay, so the towns and cities in the mountainous area, for most of these the floodwaters have receded, and they can now start kind of going back slowly and starting to rebuild and clean and everything. But that's a massive task, because you can just see how much was destroyed. I mean, one of the first things that the government's trying to do is unblock the roads, repair the roads, so people can actually go back to these towns. And another thing is getting the electricity and water and the internet back to these towns, because that was also completely destroyed. And all these people had to leave their homes. At the moment they're staying in temporary accommodations and gymnasiums, community centers. Even some companies have opened up their offices and warehouses to people stay in. And all these people need to be fed. They've lost all their possessions. They need clothes and all sorts of stuff. So that's a massive operation as well. Okay, so that was kind of the Serra region. Now the other region that was badly affected is this area here, which includes Porto Alegre, the capital. So the floodwaters flow down these mountain rivers, then join these rivers further in the south here, and flowed into what's called Rio Guaíba or Lago Guaíba, which is this big lake down here in the south, and Porto Alegre is next to this. So the water level of Rio Guaíba increased significantly and flooded Porto Alegre, and also other areas like Canoas, São Leopoldo, Novo Hamburgo. So floodwaters went up here as well. And these towns and cities are still flooded. So this intense rainfall happened nearly 2 weeks ago, and these towns and cities are still flooded. And that's because the flooding and all the intense rain happened first here in the mountainous area, and now the floodwaters have receded, and these areas got flooded later, and they're still underwater. Now the good news is that the floodwaters are receding slowly. So saying the floodwaters going down by about 1 centimeter per hour. So like in 24 hours it's going down by like 24 centimeters. But the floodwaters are still very high. So they're saying that Rio Guaíba, the water level is at 5 meters. And it needs to go down to 3 meters for Porto Alegre to stop being flooded. So I mean, that's another 2 meters that it needs to go down by. And if it's going down by roughly 20 centimeters, 24 centimeters a day, that's another over a week before the floodwaters have disappeared. Obviously, I'm talking here about Porto Alegre near Rio Grande. Obviously, in other areas the floodwaters aren't as deep, so hopefully the floodwaters will recede quicker in these other areas. So in Porto Alegre and the surrounding areas, there's still lots of rescue operations going on, rescuing people who are isolated in their homes and can't leave their homes because of the flooding. They're also having to rescue lots of animals as well, who are again stuck because of all the flooding. And then all of these people as well need to have temporary accommodation, and the government is moving a lot of these people into other towns that weren't infected by the floods, where they can stay. And there's lots of other disruption as well. So the airport in Porto Alegre, which is the main airport for the whole state, so that's been flooded, and they've closed that, and they think that will be closed until next month. I mean, there are some smaller airports, but it's caused chaos for the airlines as well. Also, they're starting to run a bit low on some supplies as well, so the supermarkets aren't getting deliveries because the roads being damaged and companies being closed and flooded. So a lot of the supermarkets, they're starting to run out of certain things. I don't know why, but it's toilet paper is always one of the first things that starts running low, and also fruit and vegetables, and also bottled water. It hasn't reached extreme levels yet, but you can definitely notice that in the supermarkets. And then also other things like hospitals as well. So some hospitals in Porto Alegre and the surrounding towns were flooded, so they've had to move patients to other hospitals. So kind of the whole hospital system in the state is stretched with lots of casualties, and then patients having to be moved. So that's also very difficult for them. But one of the things the government is doing is they're building temporary roads where the highways are flooded or important roads are flooded. So they're dumping rocks on flooded highways and roads, and then gravel on top of that, just to raise the level above the floodwaters. So just so that emergency services and food supplies, also petrol or gas as well, so all these vehicles can access the flooded areas. Another sad thing is there's been a fair bit of looting, burglaries and other crime. So people have left their homes and businesses when they got flooded, and people have broken into these homes and businesses and looted and stolen things. And there are stories also of criminals stealing boats from rescuers. So basically rescuers are on boats trying to save people, and then criminals come and steal their boats from them. Now, I don't know how widespread this is, and you can't always believe everything that the media says, but there are definitely a lot of reports of that happening. There is some more worrying news, and that's the fact that it started raining recently. So most parts of Rio Grande do Sul, they've had a few days now of sunshine and dry weather, and that's really helped for the floods to recede. But now recently it started raining again. There's a risk there might be some new flooding again. I mean, I really hope there isn't, but there is that risk. And then the other thing is that the floodwaters have now gone from Rio Grande into Lagoa dos Patos, which is this really big lagoon here, which flows out into the ocean. So the water level of this Lagoa dos Patos has increased, and there's been some flooding of some towns and cities along this as well. Now, this hasn't been as bad so far, which is good, but again, some people have had to evacuate their homes, and there has been some flooding. So it's been nearly 2 weeks now since the flooding started, and there's still loads of problems and still lots of areas flooded. So I mean, it's going to take a long time before this area gets anywhere close to how it was before. Luckily, there's been lots of donations, lots of charities involved. Also, the government's pledged lots of money to rebuild the areas. But still, it's a very, very sad situation. I'm going to leave a link to one or two charities if anyone is interested. If you like this video, please subscribe. If you've got questions or anything, leave in the commentary below. So thanks for watching. Until next time.